I sincerely welcome you all to the Lifin Security Summit of 2021. Thank you for being here. And as we expect more other persons, more participants to join in the session, thank you so much for making it a duty to be here on time. It is a welcome development. Thank you very much. Today we'll be having a distinguished speaker, a professor, who is going to speak to us, a professor at Nnamdi Azikiwe University and an alumnus of Wellington University in the United States. He's going to give us his own overview, his own research work on security and insurgency, and it will help us in understanding the situation of it and being able to find reasonable solutions to quell the tide of insurgency and terrorism in Nigeria. So thank you very much for being here and welcome on board. Today I'm going to be your host. I'm going to be the anchor of this event. And I hope that we are going to have a seamless communication, a seamless session. Floor open immediately for Professor Williams Obiazo, who is our keynote speaker for today, and we shall be speaking to us on the topic emerging threats of insurgency and terrorism in Nigeria, the need for a community approach. He coined it around a community approach where you and I will contribute to arresting the tide of insecurity in Nigeria and then doing our bit to make Nigeria a safer place. So thank you very much for being in the section, and we welcome Prof to the stage. Now, Prof, you have the stage. Good morning, sir. Very well, sir.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm sorry that I'm logging in late. You know, this technical thing, how it goes. Without wasting any time, yes, I had to adjust the theme for this presentation, and I called it Emerging Threats of Insurgency and Terrorism, a call for effective community participation to peace and unity in Nigeria.
Yes.
Distinguished participants, may I stand on the existing protocols as I discuss this topic?
All right, sir.
Now, as part of the introduction, I would say that it's no longer news for us to hear about insurgency, to hear about all kinds of terrorist acts happening now in Nigeria. It is not the news anymore. We have had a lot of situation now. Nigeria is at crossroads with insecurity, instability, banditry, terrorism, cultism that just came in too, and other ways of insurgency. And each passing day, we hear heartbreaking news of man-made calamities of all sorts, befalling innocent Nigerian citizens, within and outside the southeast. You find that in the northeast, you find that in the southwest, and you find that even in middle belt, you find that in south.
Yes,
He's becoming helpless, and as a matter of fact, we are all looking for solutions, including the national, the federal government. You know, the current insecurities in Nigeria involve a lot of criminal activities, which includes bombing, suicide bomb attacks, sporadic shooting of unarmed and innocent citizens, burning of police stations, kidnapping, you know, attacking churches, kidnapping of schoolgirls and boys and women, rape, armed robbery, political crisis, just name it. And all the new militants, banditry people. We also should not forget that even in the World Wide Web, we also have software vulnerabilities, cyber frauds and attacks, and activities of the so-called unknown gunmen. Well, let's look at the conceptual framework when we talk about emerging threats of insurgency and terrorism. What is really terrorism? Terrorism is considered to be a method of pursuing a political goal, while insurgency is a political movement aimed at realizing a specific political goal, which is generally to overthrow a regime. We can begin to analyze this distinction between terrorism and insurgency by drawing upon the case of the infamous Al-Qaeda terror plot and attack on September 11, 2001, which we all refer to as 9/11, at the Twin Towers of World Trade Center in New York, USA. I remember very well, I was just doing my industrial attachment at the University of Pittsburgh, the demonstration schools as a special education teacher when we saw the whole thing on CNN. I cannot tell how I felt that day, because those of us that are foreigners, we are seen as evil, no matter where you came from. But that's by the way. Another aspect of, if we talk about insurgency, a good example is the Boko Haram insurgency in Northeast and other parts of northern Nigeria. And as we can see now, it's gradually coming down to us. It's actually coming down to us now in the Southeast. So insurgency is a movement within a country dedicated to overthrowing the government. And insurgency is a rebellion. From the attitudes, from the behaviors, the actions that we have witnessed so far, from the news we hear every day, internally displaced persons and so on, we can understand this very well. Presently, there are proliferation of terror groups and dozens of insurgencies, guerrillas, opposing factions in civil wars, and members of organized criminal groups across many African countries and the world, not only in Nigeria. It's actually something that has spread across the world now. Such groups are not generally bound by the same constraints or motivated by the same factors, like you see in other states. But they pose significant threats to people's lives worldwide. They pose threats to peace and stability. They pose threats to political stability. So a lot of threats are bound in this type of attitude. Terrorist acts pose an especially potent threat to national interests when carried out by a small group, when carried out by individuals. These attacks are difficult to detect in advance. A good example could be the bombing at Nyanya in Abuja some years back. The ones that we saw at the Ego Square in Abuja some years back. The police headquarters bombing, the UN headquarters bombing in Abuja. All these are terrorist actions. And how do we go about taking care of this? No matter the intelligence efforts, these things still take place. Insurgents, on the other hand, aimed at overthrowing existing governments, like what the Boko Haram are doing in the northern part of Nigeria, because they don't need Western education as part of their reason. So they want to enthrone their own kind of leadership. Of course, this is destabilizing the northern region. It's destabilizing the peace and tranquility in that area, and is gradually filtering into other parts of Nigeria. It is quite appalling that these emerging threats are truly a Nigerian, African, and global problem, cutting across all nations. The threat has been starkly demonstrated even in 1995. We remember what happened in Japan, the nerve gas attack in Japan. Of course, the 9/11 bombing, the Ego Square bombing, and so on and so forth that I mentioned earlier. And they are all getting into more criminal and more dangerous and more devastating to human beings. Now we have also begun to witness the smuggling of small arms, gun running, and only God will save us if he doesn't get into the nuclear materials. With the numerous ongoing insurgencies and civil war worldwide, there are additional dangers for escalating the nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons called NBC or missiles be introduced to this conflict. We pray this doesn't happen, because as these threats go on, without control or serious action, there could be an increased potential for leakage of these nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons, or missile technology, or individuals with technological know-how will begin to work on these things, and that will destroy mankind more, gets into genocide. So then me and you will be in serious trouble. Now, what have been the major Nigeria security threats and challenges? The current government in Nigeria have been battling terrorism, banditry, kidnapping, header clashes, and recently court wars and assassinations, apart from the Boko Haram insurgency. And within these outbreaks of violence in different parts of the country, life has not been safe for anybody. Lives and properties, as a matter of fact. The march to 2023 presidential election seems to be gloomy, with the electoral process plagued with all kinds of allegations, challenges on zoning of the presidency between North and South, among other threats, could lead to heightened tensions and perhaps more violence in the periods following the presidential election in Nigeria. These are grave and unfortunate examples of the insecurity that the giant of Africa, quote unquote, because now I don't know if we are still there when it comes to being the African superpower.
Yes, so.
So we need to overcome all these situations for us to achieve our true potentials as citizens. However, it is not the only challenge facing President Muhammadu Buhari, according to World 2019. There are some other challenges. Of course, I wouldn't take your time to start reading these out or start explaining them, but let's look at a few. The issue of Boko Haram, the militant Islamic group, they have been destabilizing the northeast of Nigeria, including going down to North Central and the rest of them. Since 2009, the group has killed thousands of people and displaced millions more. About 2.5 million people fled their homes and towns in Northeast and other parts of the North. And the direct consequence of the conflict was that the Northeast was plunged into a severe humanitarian crisis. As of 2018 that I'm talking with everyone here, one of the worst, it is one of the worst in the world. We all hear about the internally displaced persons in the North. And so much terrible situations are going on there, which has left about 7.7 million people in need of humanitarian aid. There are suicide attacks, school children kidnappings that have been carried on since this year. What about this, the other aspect of the farmers and herders clashes? The Middle Belt region especially has been highly affected in this area, where they have been faced with prolonged violent clashes between the predominantly Christian farmers and the mostly Muslim cattle herders. At the core of the conflict are disputes over access and rights to land and water resources, and rapid desertification, which has changed the grazing patterns of cattle. And a human being in this, our country, has the guts to recommend water bills and open grazing. And this has created a lot of threats to insecurity, threats on terrorism, threats on insurgencies. These clashes are not necessarily new, of course. They are not necessarily new. But since 2015, when President Buhari took over the mantle of leadership, the disputes have become more frequent and violent. And the federal government has done little or nothing to stop that, from what we gather in the news and the rest of them. In 2018 alone, more than 2,000 people were killed in such clashes. More than the number killed in the past 2 years combined. The conflict now claims an estimated 6 times more than the Boko Haram crisis. The dispute is being politicized and is stirring ethnic and religious tensions, which is very dangerous in a deeply divided country like Nigeria. Now, I have a map here. It's just that we couldn't get these things right from my laptop, so I had to use my phone. You see, that would have shared this map. There are a couple of states where these killings has been so much. States like Zamfara, Kaduna, you all hear about the Southern Kaduna conflicts too. Plateau, Benue, Borno, Yobe, Adamawa. These are the mostly affected states. Others, there are still other states, you know, so much death, unfortunately. We have the Mieti Allah group. This Mieti Allah Society is an association of cattle headers whose vociferous leadership stand and on open grazing fan seeds of discourse between armed headers and farmers, resulting in violent clashes and a lot of killings. Unfortunately, these people say whatever they like, do whatever they like, and nobody does anything to them. You know, that's another problem. Of course, the Niger Delta crisis also, the conflict. The Niger Delta, the oil-producing core of this country, has for decades suffered from oil pollution, you know, which has led to the loss of livelihoods and sources of food for locals. The area has been neglected. The people are suffering. They can't fish. They can't farm. What do you want them to do? And we have heard about cleaning of Ogoni land since 2015. Up to now, Ogoni land is still how it is. In the last decade, there have been clashes between armed groups and in the area and security forces, which has reached like an all-time high. You know, kidnappings were rife, the oil infrastructure were destroyed, there was vandalism of pipelines and so on and so forth. And this has drawn back our country with regards to economic hardships. Nigeria has actually encountered the worst economic recessions because of this situation. In summary, let me state that the green reality is that Nigeria has a serious internal security problem and nobody knows exactly how to solve it. Nigeria has experienced devastating attacks from armed bandits for more than 2 years now. While these attacks initially started in northeast, northwest region of Nigeria, they have since spread to other parts of the country, including the peaceful southeast. Armed bandits frequently kidnap unsuspecting members of the public before their captives to secure huge ransoms in return for their release. Ransoms frequently come in form of the opaque government payments, a strategy that tends to undermine government authority. The level of coordination in the attack seems to betray some type of paramilitary training, or at the very least, organization by leaders with military training. Some military personnel have been captured in the past. Some police officers have been captured to be colluding with these bandits and kidnappers. But we're still where we are. So making the problem worse, bandits have recently taken to targeting softer targets such as schools. Of course, we all know what is going on. The mass kidnappings in Zamfara State. What about the Chibok girls and other schools that happened some time ago, where government took captive of over 300 schoolgirls and boys? But most of the time, they are targeting schoolgirls. The kidnapping is the latest in a string of incidents. In December 2020, 80 students were kidnapped from an Islamic school in Katsina State. This happens to be the home of the President of the Federal Republic, President and Commander-in-Chief of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. This can show you how daring these criminals are. Although they were rescued or released. Now, was it not last month or a few months ago, 42 people, including 27 students, were kidnapped from a secondary school in Niger State, signaling a geographical expansion into the North Central region and part of the Middle Belt. The targeting of schools is quite worrying, in itself, although we are all making efforts and hoping that things will get better, and these culprits will be arrested and prosecuted, but it's still going on. And this has further discouraged students in this kind of country with dismal rates of school attendance and completion of their programs. Many schools have been closed in the north because of these banditry and kidnapping cases. Banditry alone fails to explain the full scale of Nigeria's internal security problem. It is another problem on its own. For much of this decade, a murderous conflict between herders and farmers has plagued Nigeria, particularly in the Middle Belt. According to the Global Terrorism Index of 2015, Fulani militants, the most violent actor in the Middle Belt farmer-herder conflict, were adjudged the fourth deadliest terror group in the world. But nobody has proclaimed them a terror group in Nigeria, but they were first to proclaim IPOB a terror group. That's the society we are living in. In 2018, Fulani extremists were responsible for 1,158 fatalities in Nigeria, a majority of terror-related deaths in the country that year. Intense violence perpetrated by militant herdsmen has since begun to expand further towards the southwest and southeast regions as herders search for grazing routes for their cattle. Unfortunately, a combination of drought occasioned by the rapid disappearance of Lake Chad, political instability driven by Boko Haram, and banditry made herders' southward march an inevitability that will be difficult to reverse. If they are coming to the southeast and any other part of the country and avoiding destroying people's farms, grazing where they can graze, and as a matter of fact, have their ranches secured, that would have been better. Nobody would fight them, nobody would stop them. But they pose threats to security. All right, I'm gradually going to round this up by discussing a call for effective community participation to peace and unity in Nigeria. This is second to the last segment of my presentation. I'm therefore calling on all and sundry to lend their voices to the emerging security threats, condemn terrorist acts, and mobilize the leadership to be fair and just to all. The National Assembly members are not playing a good role. They are not. They're all supposed to speak out. They're all supposed to provide better solutions to these problems. Given our nation's economic, cultural, and demographic might, Nigeria must use its influence and power to contribute to peace and good governance in all parts of the country, the same way Nigeria is doing in West African peace moves and the other African regions. We know Nigeria as a peacemaker for other countries. What about Nigeria itself? We should recognize that Nigeria's stability has an inextricable impact on the peace, progress, and prosperity of the African continent. Most of these countries are looking forward to us. If Nigeria in the past decades has contributed to the de-escalation of conflicts in Liberia, in Sierra Leone, in the Gambia, in Central African Republic, and so on, why can't Nigeria continue that peaceful path to her own people in Northeast, in Southwest, in South-South, in Southeast? There is a need for all Nigerians to begin to focus on security and peaceful cohabitation, as well as invest in peace building, reconstruction and rehabilitation, and socio-economic development of all the communities in this country. The nation must find inclusive and creative ways of addressing and de-escalating the complexity in the farmer and herder crisis. Our dear President Buhari, you have to ensure that the army has learned lessons from how they dealt with the then emerging threat of Boko Haram in the past, banditry, and make sure that security forces are well equipped to defend the nation. More positive efforts should be made by the Buhari administration to address the grievances of all the regions concerned in agitation, including the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, the Oduduwas, the Niger Deltans, the Middle Beltans. There is every reason for the government to make efforts to better foster peace and development in the region, especially given the havoc the herdsmen, kidnappers, bandits, unknown gunmen, avengers, and similar other groups have already brought to the country. We are a very peaceful nation. We have been known to be peaceful. Irrespective of the divisions we have. The government needs to be proactive in its response to the conflict through helping to mediate and de-escalate the community situations, and also through making proper arrangements for displaced persons and incoming refugees to be well treated and taken care of. Communities should encourage vigilantes and neighborhood watch activities to protect it from bandits and criminals. And of course, they should have the backing of the Nigerian police force, the Nigerian army, the Nigerian Defense Corps. All the military formations should work hand in hand with the vigilantes on this. There is also need for state police in all the states so that grassroots security will be made paramount and effective. That is why people are calling for state police. To protect your devices, this is for the online terrorism that we also experience. So to protect your devices and computer, to protect your data against cyber threats, you can adopt simple measures such as using the latest hardware and software for your digital needs. You also need to adopt advanced measures such as installing a firewall to add an extra security layer so that the Yahoo boys that break into people's computers to steal their bank information will not be able to access that. People need employment, of course. Build cottage industries in communities. This is a challenge to all the state governors. This is a challenge to all the businessmen that we have in this country, especially the Southeast businessmen. You were there the other day in Oba, throwing money here and there, but people in your communities are suffering. No good education, no good road, no water, no electricity, no scholarships. Who are we waiting for to do that? I have spent half of my life in the United States, and I saw how the rich help education, how the rich protect the people, how the rich provide security for the communities they live in. In our own side is different. People will only want to show off their monies and wealth when somebody dies. But when the person is alive, nobody cares. When they are suffering, nobody cares. This should stop. Let's begin to create more opportunities for skill acquisition, training, and vocational employment for Igbo youths, for Nigerian youths. Because if these youths are empowered and if these youths are engaged in what they are doing, they will not have time to think evil. There will not be time for criminal activities. That is what it should be. Introduce community legal education. I am talking to the group now. I'm talking to the Legal Ideas Forum International that are packaging this project we are doing today. I commend you guys for that. Start thinking of how best to have community legal education. Let it be another form of civic education, which will provide trainings on legal and human rights matters, on equity and justice, on fair play, on addressing police brutality. These issues of open grazing should be replaced with cattle ranches. There have been calls for that, and we pray the federal government, the National Assembly, take heed to that, and let us begin to have, if we have cattle ranches, it will still provide employment to a lot of people. I hope that this presentation has made us aware of the threats, and hope that you will take corrective measures and actions, whether at individual level or national level, to safeguard such security issues. Finally, there is also need for legal frameworks. This is a case for the Legal Ideas Forum International, the organizers of this workshop. We need applicable legal frameworks and some key recurring issues for victims of terrorist attacks, insurgency attacks, banditry attacks. It is important to identify some of these things I'm talking about, so that the effects and resultant violations and trauma that these individuals and victims encounter will be addressed. Sometimes in the counterterrorism context, such factors are not always prominent as they should be, even though ultimately a primary objective of the rule of law based on counterterrorism efforts is to prevent victimization. So according to UNODC organization, this is very, very important, that in order to provide fully access to justice for victims, however, an understanding of the harm they have suffered and the needs that arise because of that harm is essential. So the group that is organizing this, the Legal Ideas Forum International, you have a lot of work to do. Use that your legal background to begin to fashion out how victims of terror attacks, insurgencies, banditry, kidnapping can also be compensated, because the government are not living up to their expectations. And if they are not protecting the people, they should also be able to take care of those that have been hurt, those that are killed, and there should be compensation to their families, to the victims. It's not only going to visit them in the hospital and the governor comes to the hospital to see the victims of attack and there is media paparazzi, blah, 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 and that's it. Something more should be done. Notably, the impacts identified in this section are not intended to present the specific experiences of all survivors of terror acts, but rather are descriptive of a range of responses which survivors might experience. There is always a trauma involved in all this. According to Baker, 1992, and Spirik et al., 2010, all these are part of things that they really fell through. It may be as a result of several factors, the traumatic responses. It may differ between individuals. Maybe the age and gender of the survivor, together with any political, religious, or cultural affiliations which they may hold. But what we are trying to say is that there should be considerations of individuals who have encountered or experienced these terrible actions from bandits or from insurgents and begin to get a healing. There is a need for community participation to ensure that the communities are protected, the citizens know themselves, you know when a stranger comes in, you know when a stranger leaves, you know who you are living with, what they are doing for a living, and so on and so forth. Some of these areas are very important, and we begin to encourage the media, use the social media to enlighten people about the need for community participation and involvement in stamping out threats. Okay, I think I have to stop here so far. Thank you for giving me that opportunity and audience. I pray that we all survive this situation we are in Jesus' name, amen.
Wow, that was a very wonderful presentation from you, Prof. It's a very wonderful and very, very exhaustive. We really appreciate you for sharing your thoughts on this very topic in the most professional manner. My sincere appreciation from every one of us at Lifin and from all the participants. I'm very sure if we allow everybody to talk, they must not have had it in this dimension. Your recommendations are very enormous and they are very, very timely in curbing this. If half of these recommendations are certain that this country would witness a very great measure of peace, as you have highlighted in your presentation. Of course, you've raised the issue of building cottage industries in our communities to get our young people engaged in leaving them unemployed, and then they go for alternatives, which is engaging in crimes. And of course, we've highlighted also that crime have been monetized in Nigeria. Since if you carry arms and you're able to make money carrying arms, you're able to make money causing problem, like the
I think the network. The network is really, really bad. They are all part of the terror acts we are talking about. Hello?
I'm using the opportunity. No, give me. Cannot do it. Did not gonna hear this money.
Hello? Hello?
No. What are you smiling?
Hello?
Ciao.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, Mr. Njoko, you know, there are a lot of things that needs to be done. There are a lot of things. I read something now. Some people are contributing. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, Prof, please go ahead.
Okay. I just got a message concerning this presentation. And someone is saying the lopsided recruitment and appointments in the military should also be addressed. And of course, it is one of those areas too that has to be looked into, because yes, we have what we call the federal character, and that federal character commission has to be effective in its work. If there are questions or other comments, I can attend to them in a couple of minutes before I log out. Otherwise, I will say a great thank you for giving me the opportunity to participate in your symposium or your workshop.
Hello.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. Good.
Please, so sorry, my network got very bad, and I sincerely apologize for that. So sorry.
Okay. So I have a question,
okay.
sir. I have a question.
So all right,
someone has a question.
I have a question, sir.
Hear your question?
Go ahead.
Good afternoon.
Okay.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm so grateful. Yes, I want to make a suggestion, an appeal. It's a question also. How has we intellectuals, especially, have we looked for a way to approach our businessmen? There are people that have this money. Since the government is not doing little or nothing or is doing little or nothing to improve the situation of the citizens, to nip this security situation on the board? Is there no way the intellectuals can approach these businessmen to establish cottage industries so that there will be massive employment? Because the government will tell you that the government has no business in business. So like this money rain in Oba, these monies can be used to establish at least in every local government in Anambra State, factories can be established in every local government. These monies that I saw in the social media can be used to establish factory in every local government. Or even this Onitsha, Enugu Road. Private people can come and invest, probably put a toll gate, and then to recoup their money. Is it not possible intellectuals can meet them and talk to them to do these things, instead of to keep relying on the government and to keep talking and talking and talking?
Okay,
That's my
thank you
question.
very much for that question, the statements. And any other person who feels like also joining in the discussion should come in. Now, I think the ivory tower, the universities or higher institutions or intellectuals have started making such moves. Like I mentioned earlier, I studied in the United States, and in the US there are what we call endowment funds. And not only endowment funds, businesses, companies are encouraged to donate monies to institutions, to schools, and such monies are also written off from their tax deductions, tax rebate, and so on and so forth. Now, let me use myself as an example, because even when I teach my classes, I use my own personal experiences to share with my students and people around me to understand how these things work. Recently, I was appointed a director, Center for Disabilities and Special Needs Research. I had an engagement with my Vice Chancellor, Professor Simone. Professor Simone is someone who single-handedly worked with the university to set up the School of Pharmacy that they have in Agulu. These are among those who worked with the School of Pharmacy and had Juhel Industries is into pharmaceuticals. I must commend them. They were among those who set up that institution, that campus there, and built facilities and materials and so on. That's corporate social responsibility. We have some of them. Some shy away from that. If you come to UNIZIC, there's Chisco Institute. A Chisco Institute is on automobile maintenance, repairs, and training of students, part of the engineering section, mechanical engineering section. The building was built by Chisco. The support came from Chisco. We have the Chico Koli Center for Entrepreneurship Studies. It's also a building built by Emzo Pharmaceuticals, the owner of Emzo Pharmaceuticals. Now, I have been challenged too by my Vice Chancellor to also see that this, my center, grows into a noble center that can support the society and do a lot of things. What did I do? The first thing I did now is to organize the official launching and inauguration of this center. I approached a couple of businessmen. Many of them shy away from this. They want the ones that they will be beating drums and you see them spraying money. That's the kind of nonsense some of them will want you to organize. But when it comes to supporting schools, many of them are ignorant of that, especially those who never had taste of education and understand what education is all about. But there were also some businessmen that came, that attended that official inauguration and helped us with some money, raised us some money. In fact, As I'm talking to you now, Chikasen Group has promised to work with us to set up a building. They said, bring your proposal. Let's see how we can help you. Chikasen Group has been known to, the chairman, Dr. Kafo, has been known to supporting people with disabilities for years. The same thing with GUO Transport, has been supporting people with disabilities in schools, training them, scholarship, quietly. So we have some of them, but majority are still not doing anything. But recently, Senator Ifeanyi Ubah and his progressives group came to UNIZIC to build a medical facility. So they are gradually responding, but we need more. The Wando family of Enugu have a building for architecture in UNIZIC, and so on and so forth. So, but we need more of this. We need endowment funds. We are trying to set up a scholarship fund so that anyone that is blind or deaf or dumb or have physical challenges and doesn't have any help can be given scholarships to study. That is part of the dream we have now in UNICEF for my own center, and so on and so forth. So these things are being worked on, but it's just a gradual process. Our people are not used to it. And there are some rich people, of course, who are giving scholarships, certain foundations. After my launching, one of the persons who supported us asked me to do a proposal for him to set up a foundation that his job will now be to use his money and train people in his community. Anyone that has a disability, if you want to study up to PhD level, that he will pay the school fee back. So these are some of the awareness we are trying to create in the community. With time, it will work out. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your answers. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And that was very nice from you, Prof. I'm impressed that intellectuals are doing their own bit too to make sure that Nigeria enjoys at least some what will I call it? Some measures of democracy, dividends of democracy as is being enjoyed in other parts of the world. Like you said in America, that there are endowment funds, there are scholarship funds, and these endowment funds that are brought by businesses, there is a further grant given to them by government, which is tax deduction or tax reductions and all that, and for the rest. So if we are able to adopt this kind of measure in Nigeria, I'm very sure more business people will be attracted to help their communities to get their involved in businesses and get them involved in some employment, and then they'll be distracted. That it will be a very good distraction for them to getting into crime, to getting into banditry. I'm very impressed. We very much appreciate you also, and we congratulate you for the foundation. You've done a lot for the disabled persons, and Sendesa, I think, I've followed it through as a secret disciple, Prof, and I've been following through everything you've done, and I must congratulate you. And then the Professor Esimona of UNIZIC. He's really doing a wonderful work at the
He's
institution.
a great mentor. Yes.
Yeah, you're doing a wonderful job, and thank you so much for everything that you've done, even this presentation you've made this morning. For your very busy schedule, you've mapped out time to speak to young persons. You've mapped out time to address a very pressing need, which is insurgency, and we appreciate you. We have a website where we publish this very presentation, and we believe that more people and more ears and more eyes will get to see it. And then thank you so much, sir. We sincerely appreciate it.